I'm Jackson, 34 male. I live in Austin, Texas, a city that prides itself on being original. For years, my own life felt like a bad copy of someone else's. I built a business from the ground up, only to watch my family try to airbrush me out of the picture. This is the story of how my mother threw a pot of scalding soup in my face for refusing to surrender my life to her daughter, and how that single, violent act gave me the strength to reclaim everything they ever tried to take from me. Before this story unfolds, I'd love to connect with you. Please let me know in the comments where you're watching from and what time it is in your corner of the world. It's amazing to see how far these stories can travel. The morning air in Lakeway was thick with the scent of jasmine and the low hum of professional landscaping crews. It was a neighborhood built on the idea of perfect manicured lives, and our house was the flagship model. From the outside, it was a testament to success, a sprawling modern home with floor-to-ceiling windows that overlooked the Texas Hill Country. On the inside, it was a museum curated by my stepmother, Marianne, and I was the ghost she was trying to exorcise. I stood in the kitchen, a space of gleaming quartz countertops and stainless steel appliances that were used more for social media photo ops than for actual cooking. I was stirring a pot of soup, the aroma of garlic and herbs a faint echo of a time when this room felt like a home. It was a recipe my father had taught me, one we'd perfected together in the early days of Wilder Market, our farm-to-table grocery store on South Congress. Back then, the world smelled of fresh bread, possibility, and my father's quiet pride. Now it just smelled like bleach and resentment. My laptop was open on the counter, displaying the custom logistics software I had coded myself. It tracked every crate of produce from the farm to our shelves, a digital backbone that kept the business thriving. Week 28 deliveries confirmed, the screen read. A bitter smile touched my lips. Just an hour earlier, I'd scrolled past a post from my stepsister, Kira. There she was, standing in the doorway of the market, beaming for the camera. Her caption was a masterclass in appropriation. "So proud to launch our farm-to-family initiative," she wrote, using my exact terminology. "Connecting our community with local growers is my passion." Her post was flooded with heart emojis and fawning comments praising her vision. Marianne drifted into the kitchen, her phone held in front of her like a shield. She didn't offer a greeting, she rarely did. Her attention was fixed on the screen, her perfectly manicured nails tapping out a reply. "Don't be late for dinner at Pearl's tonight," she said, her voice devoid of warmth. "We're celebrating Kira's new leadership role." It wasn't an invitation, it was a command, another scene in the play of their perfect family where I was cast as a background extra. I thought of the years following my father's death. The business had been drowning in debt, a relic of his illness. I was the one who had poured every waking hour, every dollar of my savings into its resurrection. I'd worked with farmers, renegotiated loans, and built the very systems that now made Kira's leadership look so effortless. Marianne knew this, she had watched me do it, but my contributions didn't fit her narrative. She finally set her phone down, her gaze landing on me with a chilling directness. "It's time, Jackson," she said. "Kira needs the Tesla for her networking events, and she'll need your primary credit card to cover expenses. A son who truly cares about his family knows when it's time to support his sister's career." The audacity of it was breathtaking. I reached into my pocket, my fingers finding the familiar worn leather of the wallet my father had given me for my 18th birthday. Inside, engraved in the leather, were his words, "You are enough." For years, that phrase had been a quiet mantra. Now it felt like a battle cry. The heat from the stove was nothing compared to the slow burn that had been building inside me for a decade. "No," I said, the word was quiet but solid. "I've given enough. I still pay the mortgage on this house. That car is in my name, paid for with my money." Her eyes, which could feign maternal warmth for an audience, turned to chips of ice. Without missing a beat, she picked up her phone, snapped a photo of the breakfast table I had set, and posted it to her local community group. The caption read, "A beautiful Saturday breakfast prepared by my wonderful son Jackson for his hardworking sister Kira and our family." The lie was so casual, so practiced. The real sting wasn't the falsehood itself, but her absolute confidence that no one would ever challenge it, least of all me. Outside, the crunch of gravel announced Kira's arrival. She deparked her oversized SUV, a vehicle I also paid the insurance on, with her signature carol. "Esnes," Marianne's patience snapped. Her carefully constructed facade crumbled, revealing the raw entitlement beneath. "You will give her everything or you will get out of this house," she hissed, her voice a low, vicious whip crack. Her eyes darted around the kitchen, landing on the pot of soup I had just taken off the burner. Before I could process what was happening, she grabbed the heavy pot. The metal was still searing hot. With a cry of pure rage, she lunged and hurled the contents directly at my face. The world dissolved into a blur of heat and pain. Scalding liquid, thick with vegetables and herbs, cascaded down my face, my neck, and across my shoulder. The initial shock was a wave of searing heat, a burn so intense it felt cold. A sharp metallic clatter followed as the pot hit the tiled floor, its contents splashing across the pristine white cabinets. The scent of my father's recipe, a smell I'd always associated with comfort and love, now smelled like violence. I didn't scream, I didn't retaliate. A strange, glacial calm settled over me. It was the kind of clarity that comes only when something has been irrevocably broken. In that moment, I understood that the home I had tried so hard to preserve was gone. The family I had dutifully served had never existed. It was all a performance, and the final curtain had just fallen. Marianne stood panting, her chest heaving, a look of shocked triumph on her face. She had finally done it, pushed things to a point of no return. She expected me to fight, to yell, to give her the drama she could twist into a story of my instability. I refused to give her the satisfaction. Wordlessly, I turned to the sink and twisted the cold water tap. I leaned over, letting the cool stream run over my cheek and neck, the water a blessed relief against the throbbing, blistering skin. The burn was already beginning to bloom, a fiery map of her hatred spreading across my face. I stripped off my soaked shirt, the fabric clinging painfully to my shoulder, and dropped it into the sink. I picked up my bag from the hallway, a small leather satchel I always kept packed with my laptop and a change of clothes, a habit born from years of feeling like a guest in my own home. I walked past the mess on the floor, past the splattered soup that looked like blood against the white tile. Kira was standing in the doorway, blocking my exit. Her expression was a carefully crafted mask of concern, but her eyes were shining. They held the unmistakable glint of victory. She had won. She was getting the car, the money, the house, the life she believed she was owed. "Oh my God, Jackson, what happened?" she asked, her voice dripping with the fake sympathy she deployed so effectively on social media. I didn't answer her, I simply looked at her, letting the silence hang in the air. I wanted her to see the burn on my face and know that she was a part of it. I slid my father's wallet from my pocket and placed it into my bag. It was the only thing in this house that truly belonged to me anymore. I walked past her, out the front door, and didn't look back. The Texas sun was blinding. I walked to my Tesla, the car they believed was already theirs, and got in. The black leather interior was cool against my skin. As the engine hummed to life, I saw them in the rearview mirror, Marianne and Kira standing on the porch watching me go. They weren't rushing after me. They weren't calling my name. They were simply watching their problem drive away. I drove out of that manicured neighborhood, the car gliding silently through streets lined with perfect lawns and empty smiles. I drove until I reached the Pennebaker Bridge, its iconic arch stretching across the Colorado River. I rolled down the window and the wind rushed in, a raw, stinging balm on my burned cheek. The pain was sharp, a constant reminder of what had just happened, but for the first time in years I could breathe. Freedom, it tasted like asphalt and exhaust fumes. It felt like the sting of wind on a fresh wound. My father's voice echoed in my memory, a line from a conversation we'd had long ago. "Freedom isn't something people give you, son, it's something you have to take." I had been trying to earn my place in a family that had already written me out of the script. Now the only path forward was to write my own. As I crossed the apex of the bridge, the city of Austin sprawling before me, my phone buzzed on the passenger seat. An email notification lit up the screen. The sender was Harper, my father's lawyer and oldest friend. The subject line was simple: "Your father's will." The message was brief: "The final provisions are now active. Please come to my office this afternoon." A chill ran down my spine that had nothing to do with the wind. The final provisions, what did that mean? I pulled the car into a scenic overlook with a view of Lady Bird Lake. Before I did anything else, I lifted my phone, switched the camera to selfie mode, and took a clear, high-resolution picture of my face. The burn was angry and red, already starting to swell. I saved the image. It wasn't for sympathy. It wasn't yet for evidence. It was a promise to myself, a reminder of the day I finally chose to be enough. The motel room smelled of stale air freshener and desperation. It was a small, anonymous box off the highway, the kind of place people go when they're running from something. The mirror above the cheap laminate vanity was cracked, splitting my reflection in two. Under the buzzing fluorescent light, the burn on my cheek looked even worse, a raw, angry welt of scorched skin. I gently dabbed it with a cool cloth, hissing as a fresh wave of pain radiated across my face. This was the price of saying no. But the physical sting was nothing compared to the deep, hollow ache of realizing I had been systematically erased from my own life. I had to see a doctor, but first I needed answers. My phone rang, shattering the quiet. It was Riley, one of my oldest friends and a data security analyst. Her voice was tight with urgency. Jackson, are you okay? I heard you left the house. News traveled fast in our circle, a network Marianne and Kira constantly tried to infiltrate and control. I'm fine, Riley, I'm out, I said, the words feeling both terrifying and liberating. Listen to me, she said, her voice dropping to a near whisper. I kept something. A while back, Kira asked me to help her digitize old family documents. She played it off as a sentimental project. One of the files was a legal document. It has your signature on it, but I knew the moment I saw it that you never signed it. Your J was all wrong. My blood ran cold. What kind of documents? Meet me back of the Houndstooth on the east side. Don't tell anyone you're coming. An hour later, the blistering Austin sun beat down on the asphalt parking lot. Riley was waiting, her expression grim. She handed me a plain manila envelope without a word. My hands trembled slightly as I opened it. Inside was a scanned copy of an assignment of interest. It was a legal instrument transferring majority control of Wilder Market from me to Marianne. And there, at the bottom, was a clumsy, forged version of my signature. My stomach plummeted. Attached to the document was a bank statement. It showed a series of fund transfers, moving significant sums of money directly from the Wilder Market business account into Kira's personal account. The memo line for each transfer was chillingly generic: marketing and development. They've been bleeding you dry, Jay, Riley said softly. I leaned against the hot hood of my car, my mind racing. I opened my laptop and had Riley send me the original file she had saved. I immediately checked the file's metadata, the digital fingerprint that trails every document. The scan date was 5 years ago. It was the week of my father's funeral. The breath left my lungs in a painful rush. They had chosen the moment I was at my most vulnerable, shattered by grief, to execute their betrayal. They had used my mourning as a cover for their theft. Look closer, Riley said, pointing at the screen. She zoomed in on the notary seal at the bottom of the page. See that? The ink is too perfect. There's no impression, no blade. It's a digital stamp copy-pasted onto the document. It's a clean forgery, but a lazy one if you know what you're looking for. I took a series of high-resolution screenshots, documenting the pixelation around the seal, the inconsistent signature, the damning metadata. I created a new encrypted folder on my hard drive. I labeled it Harper. Just as I saved the last file, my email pinged again. It was from Leia, a former manager at Wilder Market who had quit months ago, citing Kira's toxic leadership. The email was short. Jackson, I thought you should see this. This felt wrong to me. Attached was a grant application submitted to the state of Texas for a program called Austin Food Connect. It was my passion project, an initiative I had been developing for years to create a nonprofit that would distribute fresh produce to low-income families. My name, Jackson Wilder, was listed as the project founder. But as I scrolled through the application, reading the interview responses, my blood boiled. The words were mine, taken from my private journals, from conversations we'd had, from business plans I had written. But the story they told was Kira's. She had stolen my ideas, my voice, my very identity, and was using it to paint herself as a philanthropic visionary. I sat in the car, the city's vibrant energy buzzing around me, feeling completely detached. My first instinct was to call the police, to blow the whistle on the whole sordid affair, but I knew how they would react. They would twist it, claim it was a family dispute, a misunderstanding. They would paint me as a disgruntled, jealous son. If the state investigated the grant and found discrepancies, I would be T1 held legally responsible. My name was on the lines. The truth wasn't enough. I needed the truth to be irrefutable. I needed a case so airtight that not even their web of lies and influence could break it. I forwarded everything to Harper: the forged document, the analysis of the notary seal, the fraudulent grant application. I requested a meeting for the next morning. Then I opened a new spreadsheet. I began to build a timeline, cataloging every piece of evidence, every transfer of funds, every stolen phrase. I rated each item by its strength and corroborating proof. They wanted to erase me. They were about to find out they had chosen the wrong person to bury. As the sun began to set, my phone buzzed with a text from an unknown number. The message was short and cryptic. Don't sign anything from Marianne. Harper has what you need, but it's not just the will. I stared at the screen until it went dark. The burn on my face throbbed, a dull, persistent ache. But beneath the pain, a different kind of fire was beginning to build. It was a cold, quiet fury. They thought I would crumble. They thought I would stay silent. They were wrong. I wasn't just my father's son anymore. I was his heir, and my war had just begun. Downtown Austin in the morning was a world of sharp angles and reflected light. The glass facade of the Frost Bank Tower, a building locals called the Owl Building, seemed to watch over the city with an indifferent gaze. Harper's office was on the 30th floor, with a panoramic view of the Colorado River snaking its way through the heart of Texas. Harper greeted me with a firm handshake and a quick, professional glance at the burn on my cheek. He was a man in his early 60s, with the calm, methodical demeanor of someone who had seen it all. He was my father's closest friend, the executor of his estate, and I was beginning to realize my greatest ally. "We'll have that injury documented later today by a medical professional," he said, his tone leaving no room for argument. He gestured for me to sit and slid a thick, leather-bound folder across the polished mahogany table. "Let's start with what your father put in place." Inside the folder was the original will. The language was clear and direct, just like my father. It named me the sole primary owner of Wilder Market. Marianne was listed, but only as a temporary co-manager, with her authority strictly limited to a 12-month period following his death if, and only if, I was medically incapacitated. The document they had forged was a complete fabrication. But it was the second document that took my breath away. It was a codicil, a legal amendment to the will, written in my father's familiar, steady handwriting. It had been witnessed and sealed years ago. It stated that if any evidence of impersonation, fraud, or falsified paperwork related to the control of Wilder Market ever came to light, all managerial rights, temporary or otherwise, would immediately and irrevocably revert to me. Furthermore, it empowered Harper's firm to act on my behalf without my explicit instruction to secure the assets. My father had foreseen their greed. He had laid a trap for them 5 years before they'd even known they were walking into one. Harper then produced a thin, brittle envelope. "This was sent to you at the house 5 years ago," he said, his voice low. "It was returned to my office as undeliverable a month later, which was impossible since you were living there." My name and address were written on the front in my father's hand. Inside was a letter from him and a small brass key taped to the bottom of the page. "Jackson," the letter read, "protect what matters, I trust you. This key is for a safe deposit box. In it, you'll find the original deeds and my private ledgers. They are yours." He had tried to warn me, he had tried to arm me. Marianne must have intercepted the letter and sent it back. "Mail interference is a federal offense," Harper said flatly, adding the letter to a growing pile of evidence. I took a deep breath, trying to steady the tremor in my hands. I pushed the folder Riley had given me across the table. "There's more," I said. Harper examined the forged transfer, his eyes narrowing at the digital notary seal. He typed the notary's name into a database on his monitor. A photo and address popped up. "Mr. Miller," Harper murmured. "He lives 3 doors down from you. He's also the head of your neighborhood SHOA." The pieces were starting to click into place, forming a dark, ugly picture of conspiracy. They hadn't just used a random notary, they had used a complicit neighbor. My fury, which had been a hot, chaotic thing, was now cooling into something harder and more focused. It was the kind of anger that could build a case, brick by brick. "This is our strategy," Harper said, leaning forward. "First, we move silently. We'll get an independent handwriting analysis to formally debunk your signature. We'll file a confidential request with the state, presenting the evidence of identity theft and asking them to freeze the grant application pending a full investigation. Next, we invoke the codicil. We will file a notice with the court, reasserting your full and immediate control of Wilder Market. Finally, we document the mail interference and the assault. We build a wall of evidence so high they can't climb over it." I nodded, my mind processing each step. Then I told him the one thing that complicated everything. "I helped my father buy that house. My name is on the title along with Marianne's." Harper didn't even blink. "That's not a complication, that's leverage. If she refuses to cooperate, we file a suit for partition. We force a sale of the property and divide the assets. It's a messy process, but it is absolute." He pushed one last document toward me. It was a scanned page from one of my father's earliest business ledgers dated from the 1990s. His meticulous notes filled the margins, and in the bottom right corner in the same steady script as the letter was a simple inscription for Jackson. Page after page, it was the same. He wasn't just building a business, he was building my legacy. It felt like my father was reaching out across the years, telling me to fight. Harper leaned back in his chair. "They have built their entire story within the community. They have used your neighborhood, your business, and your own name to create a fiction, so we will dismantle that fiction in the same place." "What do you mean?" "The HOA meeting is this weekend," he said. "Mr. Miller will be there. Marianne and Kira will be there, likely presenting their revitalization plans funded by your stolen grant. That is our courtroom. If you need to reveal the truth, you should do it in a room full of people they've been lying to." I pictured the community hall, the polite applause, the neighborhood gossip that spread faster than wildfires. It was a terrifying prospect, but he was right. They had used the court of public opinion against me. It was time to use it to my advantage. "I'll be there," I said, my jaw tight. As I stood to leave, Harper offered one final piece of advice, his voice softer than before. "Be ready, Jackson. When you drag something like this into the light, their first instinct will be to try and shut off all the lights." I walked out of his office holding the envelope with my father's letter. I clutched it so tightly I could feel the shape of the key pressing into my palm. The city looked different now. It was no longer just a place I lived, it was a battleground. And for the first time since my father's death, I felt like I had a fighting chance. The days leading up to the HOA meeting were a blur of calculated preparation. My small motel room transformed into a war room. The cracked mirror now reflected a wall covered in sticky notes, each one a piece of the puzzle, a date, a name, a transaction number. This wasn't about revenge anymore, it was about reclamation. Harper's words echoed in my mind. We put all the cards down. No emotion, just sequence and proof. Our strategy was simple but powerful. We would let their own actions condemn them. My job was to assemble the narrative, creating a timeline so clear and well documented that it would be impossible to refute. I worked with a quiet, relentless focus I hadn't felt in years. I combed through years of bank statements, highlighting every suspicious transfer from the business account to Kira's. The amounts were staggering. She had been funding her lavish lifestyle with the profits I had worked tirelessly to generate. I cross-referenced the dates with her social media posts. A luxury trip to Bali, a new designer wardrobe, endless brunches at expensive restaurants, all under the guise of business development. Riley became my digital ghost, working in the background. She delved into the Wilder Market server archives, a digital space Kira and Marianne had long ignored. She found what she was looking for, a deleted email thread. In it, Kira outlined a comprehensive plan to Marianne for a brand refresh. The plan detailed a phased strategy to gradually remove my name from all public-facing materials, from the websites, about use page to the supplier contracts I had personally negotiated. The final email in the chain was sent on my birthday last year. "By this time next year," Kira had written, "everyone will think of the market as mine. Jackson will just be a forgotten chapter." Reading those words felt like a punch to the gut, but it was also a gift. It was proof of intent. Meanwhile, Leia, the former manager, connected me with other past employees. Their stories painted a consistent picture of Kira's incompetence and Marianne's manipulation. One remembered Kira demanding the company credit card to pay for a friend's bachelorette party. Another recalled Marianne telling vendors that I was stepping back from the business due to personal issues. Each anecdote was a small thread, but woven together, they created an undeniable tapestry of deceit. I had each of them write a short signed declaration of their experiences, which Harper's office promptly notarized. Harper handled the legal machinery. He filed the official notice invoking the codicil, a legal move that put the courts on notice that a change of control was imminent. He prepared a cease and desist letter for the notary, Mr. Miller, to be delivered immediately after the HOA meeting. He also drafted the petition for the partition sale of the house, holding it in reserve as our trump card. The day before the meeting, I drove to the safe deposit box. The bank was old and quiet, with marble floors that echoed with every footstep. The brass key my father had left me felt heavy in my hand. Inside the box were the original hard copy deeds for Wilder Market and a stack of his personal ledgers. I spent hours poring over them. His handwriting was a map of the business's soul. He had recorded not just numbers, but stories, notes about a farmer's new baby, a reminder to send a gift to a loyal employee, a sketch for a new store layout. And on the final page of the last ledger, he had written a note to me. "Jackson, a business is not about profits. It is about people. It is about integrity. Never sacrifice one for the other. This is all for you. Make me proud." Tears welled in my eyes. For 5 years, I had been trying to make him proud by keeping his legacy alive, even as it was being poisoned from within. Now I realized making him proud meant fighting for the integrity he cherished. It meant exposing the truth, no matter how ugly. That evening, I assembled the final presentation. It wasn't a slideshow of accusations. It was a quiet, factual dismantling of a lie. I had the forged document, the metadata analysis, the bank statements, the email from Kira about erasing my name, the employee declarations, and the crisp, clear copies of my father's ledgers. Each document was placed in a separate, labeled folder. My phone buzzed with an unknown number. It was the same source that had texted me before. "They are planning to announce a new community partnership at the meeting. They will use your name. Be ready." The warning was another piece of the puzzle. They weren't just erasing me, they were planning to use my ghost to further their agenda. I laid out the suit I would wear, a simple dark charcoal suit that my father had bought me. It was a suit of armor. I looked at my reflection. The burn on my cheek had started to heal, but a faint scar remained. It wasn't a mark of shame. It was a reminder of what they had done and a reminder that I had survived it. I was no longer the quiet son who absorbed the blows. I was the rightful owner armed with the truth. The lights were about to come on, and I was ready to show everyone what had been hiding in the shadows. The Zilker Park Community Hall was packed. The air was thick with the smell of catered coffee and the low murmur of neighborhood chatter. Folding chairs had been arranged in neat rows facing a podium, behind which a large screen displayed the HOA meeting agenda. I spotted Marianne and Kira near the front, holding court. Kira was dressed in a sharp, cream-colored blazer, looking every bit the dynamic young entrepreneur she pretended to be. Marianne stood beside her, beaming with proprietary pride. They looked confident, untouchable. I took a seat in the third row with Harper beside me. I placed a thick accordion file on my lap and breathed slowly, evenly. I could feel the familiar weight of my father's wallet in my jacket pocket. Across the aisle, I saw Mr. Miller, the notary, looking distinctly uncomfortable as he chatted with another homeowner. He hadn't seen us yet. After a few routine agenda items, the HOA chairwoman introduced the main event. And now, we're thrilled to hear a special presentation on the South Congress Revitalization Project from a leader in our local business community, Ms. Kira Vance of Wilder Market. Kira strode to the podium to a smattering of polite applause. Her presentation began, the slides filled with my words, my concepts, my business philosophy. She spoke of community integration and sustainable partnerships, phrases I had written in my original business plan for the Austin Food Connect grant. She presented them as her own brilliant innovations. I watched her not with anger but with a kind of detached pity. Her entire identity was a collage of stolen pieces. When she finished, the chairwoman smiled. Thank you, Kira, for that inspiring vision. The floor is now open for questions. This was the moment. I stood up. A few heads turned, a ripple of curiosity moving through the room. My voice when I spoke was calm and steady. It didn't waver. That was a compelling presentation, I began, addressing the room, not just Kira. But it's based on a false premise. Kira doesn't own Wilder Market, I do. A confused silence. C fell over the hall. Kira laughed, a light, dismissive sound. Oh, Jackson, she said with a condescending smile. We all know you've had a hard time since Dad passed, but this isn't the place for family drama. I ignored her. I walked to the front table and opened my file. I laid out the first document, the official state registration for the business, listing me as the sole proprietor since its incorporation. I've managed every aspect of Wilder Market since 2017, I said, my voice carrying to the back of the room. I followed it with 5 years of tax filings, all bearing my signature. Then came the vendor contracts I had personally negotiated and the delivery ledgers from the logistics software I had built. My name was everywhere, a persistent fact they hadn't bothered to fully erase. An elderly woman with braided white hair stood up. I remember your father, she said, her voice soft but clear. At the grand opening, he put his arm around you and told me, this is Jackson's legacy, he's the heart of this place. The murmur in the room grew louder. Kira's smile tightened. Memories can be unreliable, she snapped. We're here to talk about the future. Harper stood. He held up a photocopy of the forged transfer document. This document purports to transfer control of the market to Marianne, he announced. His voice was calm but carried the weight of legal authority. It bears a notary seal belonging to Mr. Miller, who is sitting right over there. Every head in the room swiveled to face the notary. Mr. Miller turned a shade of crimson. He tugged at the collar of his golf shirt. Mr. Miller, Harper continued, are you comfortable confirming, in front of your friends and neighbors, that you applied your official seal to this document on a day when the signatory, Mr. Wilder, was attending his own father's funeral? Miller stammered, I notarize a lot of documents. I can't be expected to remember every single date. His evasiveness was a confession in itself. Marianne shot to her feet, her voice shrill. This is an outrage. My son is a bitter, jealous man trying to destroy his sister's success. He hasn't contributed a single thing to that store in years. I didn't engage, I didn't have to. Harper slid another document onto the table, a summary of my personal financial contributions to the business, totaling hundreds of thousands of dollars. He contributed capital, expertise, and 5 years of his life, Harper stated. The records are quite clear. The room was silent now, the way a forest goes quiet just before a storm. A young man at the tech table who was managing the projector cleared his throat. I have something. A moment later, a video filled the screen. It was from the farm-to-table launch event in 2020. There I was, younger and less worn down, standing by a display of fresh produce. I was passionately explaining my vision for connecting local growers directly with consumers, using the exact phrases and concepts Kira had just claimed as her own. The room didn't look at the screen, they looked at her. Her face was pale, her composure finally cracking. Wilder Market is a team effort, she said weakly. I'm just the public face of what we've all built together. I could have torn her apart, listed every lie, every theft, but I chose my father's way, integrity. I looked directly at her. You can't be the face of a business you tried to fraudulently sign away from the person who actually built it. I placed the final document on the table, the notarized notice invoking my father's codicil. The chairwoman picked it up and read the key phrase aloud. In the event of falsified instruments, all managerial control immediately reverts to Jackson Wilder. She looked at Kira, then at Marianne, her expression hardening. She tapped her gavel lightly. This discussion is over. The revitalization agenda item is tabled indefinitely, pending clarification of ownership. The meeting was adjourned. Marianne and Kira were surrounded by a wall of silence. No one would meet their eyes. As we walked out, Harper leaned in. That was the public trial, he murmured. Now comes the sentencing. Outside, the Texas sky was vast and blue. My phone was already lighting up with messages from neighbors, vendors, and old customers, all offering their support. I had walked into that room a ghost. I was walking out as the owner of Wilder Market. The lights were on, and everyone had finally seen the truth. The mediation took place 3 days later in a sterile conference room in Harper's office building. The mood was glacial. There was no audience this time, no performance. There was only the weight of undeniable proof. Marianne and Kira sat opposite me, their lawyer between them, looking defeated. The bravado they'd shown at the HOA meeting had evaporated, replaced by a sullen, resentful silence. Harper didn't waste time with pleasantries. He methodically laid out the case, not with accusatory language, but with the cold, hard facts. He presented the analysis from the handwriting expert confirming my signature was forged. He displayed the server logs showing the creation and transmission of the fraudulent document. He played the short, grainy video from the back office camera, where Marianne and Kira's voices could be heard plotting to use my name and then discard me. With each new piece of evidence, their lawyer's shoulders slumped a little further. He knew he had an unwinnable case. When Harper presented the federal mail interference charge for the intercepted letter and mentioned that the state was launching a full-scale fraud investigation into the grant application, the fight went out of them completely. He slid a stack of papers across the table. It was a settlement agreement. It stipulated their immediate and permanent relinquishment of any and all claims to Wilder Market. It required them to sign a binding non-disclosure and non-disparagement agreement. Finally, it triggered the partition sale of the Lakeway house, with the proceeds to be split according to our legal ownership stakes. Marianne's hand trembled as she reached for the pen. She looked at me, her eyes filled not with remorse but with a venomous hatred. Your father would be so ashamed of you, she spat. I didn't react. I simply slid my father's wallet to the center of the table and opened it to the engraved inscription. You are enough. I let the words sit there, a quiet rebuttal to her poison. She and Kira signed every page. It was over. Weeks later, they returned to the Lakeway house to collect their belongings. I wasn't there, but Harper's associate was. He told me they walked into a home that had been stripped of every trace of me. My books, my furniture, the photos of my father, all of it had been moved into storage. All that remained were their things, looking strange and out of place in the cavernous, empty rooms. A realtor was waiting for them in the living room with a for sale sign to plant in the perfect, manicured lawn. The house, their stage for a life of carefully curated lies, was being sold out from under them. I never went back. My new apartment was a small one-bedroom in East Austin, a neighborhood thrumming with life, music, and the smell of food trucks. It wasn't grand, but it was mine. The first thing I hung on the wall was a painting my father had done years ago of the original Wilder Market storefront. In the corner, his familiar script for Jackson. On a small shelf, I placed the soup bowl Marianne had thrown at me. I had found it, washed it, and kept it. It wasn't a trophy, it was a reminder of my breaking point, the moment I chose survival over submission. Healing wasn't a single event, it was a slow, quiet process. It came in unexpected moments, an email from a loyal customer thanking me for bringing the heart back to Wilder Market, a conversation with an old vendor who clapped me on the shoulder and said, "Good to have you back at the helm, son." Each one was a small stitch helping to close a wound I had carried for years. The Austin Public Library invited me to be part of a speaker series on local entrepreneurship. I stood at a podium, not unlike the one Kira had used, and I told my story. I didn't speak of them with anger. I spoke about the quiet danger of losing yourself to someone else's narrative and the difficult necessary journey of reclaiming your own truth. After I finished, people lined up to talk to me not just about business, but about their own stories of being silenced, of fighting to be seen. I realized my story wasn't just mine anymore. One afternoon, I was at a downtown grocery store picking up supplies for the market when I saw her. Marianne. She was standing alone in the produce aisle, looking smaller and older than I remembered. Our eyes met for a brief second across a display of organic apples. There was no flicker of recognition, no anger, just the dull, tired eyes of a stranger. I gave her a slight, almost imperceptible nod, not of forgiveness, but of closure. She turned and walked away. I felt nothing. Not rage, not pain, just a profound sense of release. The hold she had on me was finally completely broken. I stepped out of the store and into the bright Texas sun. Music drifted from a nearby bar, and the air was filled with the vibrant energy of the city. I had lost the only family I'd ever known, but in the process I had found myself. The truth hadn't just set me free, it had allowed me to build a new life, one where I was the sole author of my own story. And as I walked back toward my car, toward my business, toward my life, I knew, with a certainty that settled deep in my bones, that I was finally truly enough.